Hi, class, and welcome to Chapter 2. Chapter 2 talks about making ethical decisions and managing a socially responsible business. We'll get into some of the pitfalls of trying to make a few shortcuts on your way to success. We will actually talk about some major companies who thought they could get away with billions of dollars of fraud just to be caught by their own colleagues. We shall explain why obeying the laws is the only and first step in behaving ethically. I think something important about when you think about ethical, it's not about your moral, your church, who you believe in. It's about what society says is an ethical thing to do. If you do it, do you feel good about it? If you don't do it, do you have a little bit of hesitation in terms of should I have done that? But this ties really into business. Ask three questions you need to answer when faced with potentially unethical actions. That's going to be kind of key because every time you make a decision, you're going to ask three questions. We'll get into that in just a little bit. Part of the objectives. We're going to get into describing the management's role in setting ethical standards. There should be ethical standards set in every single company, especially if they're public companies, especially if they're getting government funding, especially if they actually are doing things that actually are a public base. Now, private folks, they need to as well, but they don't always adhere to the same ethical standards. We shall distinguish between compliance-based and integrity-based ethical codes, and list these 6 steps in setting up a corporate ethic code. There's certain steps involved. Responsibilities, who do you report it to? Something happens unethical, can you be a whistleblower, and so forth. We're going to get into analyze the role of U.S. businesses in influencing ethical behavior in terms of in global markets. Matt Damien and Gary White, basically, are co-founders of water.org. This is a really great organization because there's been such a lack of clean water in developing countries. The effect actually it affects the well-being and economic growth of those countries. So Matt Damien and Gary White decided, you know what? As entrepreneurs and engineers, for Gary White's point of view, they founded water.org. It actually helped families access microloans to fund their own water operations. In other words, you know how you say you give a person a fish to feed his family? That's a temporary fix. But if you give the person the skills and the ability to go fishing for himself and come back with bushels of fish, he's going to feed a whole village. Same kind of concept here. So they also formed Water Equity to invest in various enterprises, giving the profits to underprivileged people. Ethical. The whole chapter is about ethics. Something great. So you can do ethical things, but it's also considered really good things. Water.org goal is to provide 4.6 million people with clean water and sanitation over the next 7 years. Great job, Matt and Gary. This company's clothing is helping, I love this, helping reverse the decline in the environmental health of our planet by donating time, services, and at least 1% of its sales to environmental groups all over the world. Do you know the name of that company? Look it up and you send it to me in a chat. Ethics is more than legality. Is it legal? Ethics basically, people have gone through a life of scandals. So there's life after scandal. Actually, scandals have shaken the real estate world, mortgage, and banking industries. So how do we restore trust in the free market system? Well, the first thing I thought about was Wells Fargo. There is a major problem with Wells Fargo still. And upon years ago, they got caught, as we say, with their hand in the proverbial cookie jar. So how do we actually restore trust in the free market? Well, first of all, we punish those who have broken the law. We also make accounting records more transparent. What's really going on in your companies? Also, consider what is ethical, not just what is legal. A lot of companies try to skip through that, but there are ways to have ethical decisions automatically within your company. So in 2016, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau fined Wells Fargo, which is a huge bank, $185 million for creating more than 1.5 million fake accounts and 500,000 fraudulent credit cards in customers' names without their knowledge. This brought widespread attention to a number of other scandals associated with the financial services firm, which has resulted in Wells Fargo paying out billions of dollars in lawsuit settlements. So what Wells Fargo thought they would do is to inflate their, how do you say, well, cook the books. In essence, they cook the books, which means if you want to invest, for example, on Wall Street, and you say, "Oh my God, Wells Fargo is huge. Look at all of the accounts. Look at all the people who believe in Wells Fargo. They got all these amazing. They got 180 million dollars worth of amazing accounts." No, this is all fraudulent. They actually had egg on their face. They said, "Oh my goodness, what are we going to do? How are we going to get around this?" And I'm still surprised when I talk to students and they tell me they are still with Wells Fargo. Once you get bitten by a dog, you are very cautious about petting that dog again. Same concept. I would never do business with Wells Fargo. Examples of some of the largest corporations and the scandals that they got caught up in. Enron. Enron was huge. Enron basically, former Enron CEO Kenneth Lay, CFO Andrew Fastow, and CEO Jeffrey Skillings were found guilty of committing accounting fraud by moving billions of dollars of debt to Enron's balance sheet, which artificially inflated the company's stock and bond prices. In other words, everyone thought, "Oh my God, Enron is a very thriving company. We'd better go ahead and get in on that." The result of them getting caught, basically, they had to go bankrupt. The company made millions, while employees and other small investors lost $74 billion. Lay died prior to his sentencing. Fasto served 400, sorry, four, it probably should have been 400, 4 years, which ended in 2011. Skillfully originally received a 24-year sentence, but in 2013 he struck a deal to reduce his sentence to 10 years in exchange for giving $42 million to the victims of the Enron fraud. Wow. Skillings was released in 2019. People sometimes they think that things will always be kept in the dark, but when light is shed upon them, people are like, "I see what just happened." And what happened with Enron, a lot of the lower ranking management, which let's say department directors or lower end managers, they saw what was happening and they actually did a whistleblowing. They did a whistleblowing procedure, and it turned out that, wow, Enron, you really did all of this. Inside folks actually ratted them out. WorldCom is another one. You can read this yourself, but WorldCom did some amazing, unique, creative financing as well. The accounting irregularities, not disclosed debt, and falsely counting revenue that was not received made this company look almost 11 billion more profit than it was. In other words, they cooked the books as well. This led to the loss of 30,000 jobs and 180 billion in losses to the investors. So what you have to take into account is these are publicly traded companies. Banks actually receive money from us to invest in the profitability of a company. Here's WorldCom, Enron. Now these were major conglomerates. Now they don't exist anymore. Tyco, Freddie Mac, Lehman Brothers, Bernie Madoff. Oh my goodness, Bernie Madoff. They had a TV series about this gentleman. He basically created a Ponzi scheme. He tricked investors out of $64.8 billion, not million, billion dollars in the largest ever Ponzi scheme. Madoff, he paid investors return out of their own money or the money of other investors instead of out of profits. In other words, he was just doing a shell game. You give me 5,000 and I will guarantee you're going to get about 5,500 back in 30 days. That's the kind of amazing, stocks that I'm investing in for you guys. No, he took that 5,000, gave it to a new investor, and then a new investor gave him another 5,000. He kept moving the money around. There was no growth. That's called a Ponzi scheme. Wow. So ethics, again, is more than legality. Is it legal? No. Is it ethical? Ethical standards are the fundamental. So standards. If we look at ethics, ethics basically is the standards of moral behavior. How do you act so that other folks see that you are either legitimate or that you are truthful or that you're sincere That's the essence of ethics. Behavior accepted by society as right versus wrong. For example, when I go to the grocery store, I always remind the cashier that I have sodas, cases of sodas, on the bottom of my shopping cart. I just feel odd if I go out with it. I bring my dogs to the store sometimes, and I will buy, say, dog food or something or a toy, and I'll put it near my dogs in the shopping cart so they can play with it. As we're shopping, I almost got out of Ross realizing I still had the item not paid for. So that to me is the ethics that I live by. It's like, because I believe in karma. I believe somehow someone's going to screw me over somehow, and I'm going to have an issue. Few Americans have moral absolutes, which means I will never do this. They sway a little bit. There's times they may do something that they probably shouldn't do. So common standards of ethical behavior come from religion. A lot of it comes from religion. The golden rule. Do unto others as you'd want them to do unto you. I've always lived by that. I never want to be mean to anyone. A lot of you will see that I'm always in a good mood. I choose to be in a good mood. That's to me is an ethical decision. If you choose to be in a horrible mood, a bad mood, you're going to put off that energy, and people are going to think, "Oh, I can never ever be better than I am because the teacher says I'm horrible, or he's always in a bad mood. The whole world must be in a bad mood." Ethics starts basically again from the golden rule: do unto others as you'd want them to do unto you. And this also begins with each of us. Every one of us has the responsibility to try to be ethical. Unethical behavior, good example, in the office. Violation of standards, say for example, you have to do something a particular way and you shortcut it. Or simply goofing off, throwing, let's say a paperclip at your buddy, and he laughs and he throws it back before you know it. Somebody gets, hit in the eye. Unethical. Safety. Most people they don't volunteer. They'd rather get paid for their service. Ethical. I love volunteering. I'm always volunteering. When my son and my daughter, was in elementary school and junior high and high, I was always there. Football practice, tennis. If the coach needed me to, organize the students and get them all lined up to do the jump, the little track stuff, I was there. Okay. In school, plagiarism from the internet. We know that is rampant. It goes back to ethics. I know that sometimes professors are so stringent, they don't really give you enough to go by to write an amazing paper. And you have to kind of jump off, and do a little something unethical. But the point is, that's where it begins. So somehow you got to figure out how to do things straight from your heart, your resources, your skills, instead of grabbing everything from the internet. Studies also have found a strong relationship between academic dishonesty and dishonesty at work. Meaning, if you're dishonest from the inception of learning about, let's say, ABC or 1, 2, 3 academically, it's going to bleed into your actual job, according to statistics. Again, ethics does begin with us. Some days at work, you are tempted to spend most of the time playing games on your computer. I know there's times that when I was in a clerical position at one of the colleges, that I would take my 15-minute break or my 10-minute break, and on that time, I would play, say, solitaire, or I'd do some kind of game on my computer. But I know I was on break. But do you think the people who walked past my computer knew I was on break? No. They assumed that I was goofing off, that I was cheating the company by playing games on my computer. So I decided to walk away from my desk when I'm on a 10-minute break and maybe play a game on my phone. Sit on a bench in front of my office or whatever. Again, it's about perception. It's about the optics, how people see you. So somehow turn it around. Watching videos, texting. I can't tolerate when I see students texting in my class because it tells me that they don't have any ethical responsibility to try to be good and to focus on the lecture. Sending emails to friends, okay? This is from a work perspective, not just students, or reading a book or a magazine on your device. I have been in a lot of roles as a leader, and I have corrected every bit of these behaviors, every one of the behaviors I've encountered. And if I didn't correct it, the rest of my staff will be doing the same thing. I had one young lady said that this is her way of focusing. She had a chance to unwind in the middle of a really hectic work day or in the middle of putting a project together. My response to her is take more breaks if you need, but don't sit there on your computer doing solitaire. And then some people do it so blatantly, you're thinking you are in the wrong by correcting them. So what is the problem in this situation? What are your alternatives? What are some of the consequences of each alternative? Which alternative will you choose? Is your choice ethical? And I think something happens here is I believe in lead by example. If my staff member or an employee or whomever it is walks into my office, they'll never see me on the computer playing all these games and watching TV or or doing things that are not associated with the company. I worked at one company, this vice president, who I also was a vice president, I'd go in his office, he'd close his laptop down quickly. And I'll be, oh, you got a desktop, why are you on your laptop? I wouldn't say that, but my thought was, what's he doing? He was working for another university at the same time and doing their work on our time. Ethical. Maybe not. Well, here's some ethical dilemmas. You must choose between two unsatisfactory alternatives. Ask yourself these questions. Here's the three questions we talked about from earlier. Is my proposed action legal? Number one, is it balanced? How will it make me feel about myself? Three questions. If one of those particular ones you're like, I'm not too sure if it's balanced, then you're doing something unethical. You go home and don't feel too good about it, like me when I got home one time and the person actually missed zapping those cases of soda under my cart. I felt bad about it. I felt like I stole it. I felt like I was being sneaky. It just happened. Next time, what do? Constantly remind them there's sodas in the bottom of my shopping cart. It makes me feel better. Creating an online garbage, I'm sorry, garbage. Creating an online garage sale for a good cause. I love this one. This is Megan Weingard. She launched called Geropolis, I think that's how you pronounce it, an online platform that allows people to sell stuff in support of local nonprofits. That's amazing. My son worked at Goodwill, and it's just a phenomenal outpouring of goods and services from the community that gets resold into the community, and it creates jobs for disabled employees. My son is autistic, and so it is such a blessing when I see people lined up to donate stuff at the drop-off center at Goodwill. It is especially appealing to today's young people who have different expectations for donating to philanthropist organizations. In other words, they don't want to give money to big corporations. They want to be, giving away all their money, but they want to do something that'll be effective for the community. Again, this entire chapter 2, is about ethics. Bribery bad boys. 5 FCPA violations. FCPA stands for Foreign Corrupt Practice Act. Walmart violation the books and records and failing to operate a sufficient anti-corruption compliance program. Ericsson, which is electronics, a large-scale bribery scheme in multiple countries. Microsoft violation in Hungary, Thailand, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey. Cognizant bribery schemes in India. In Deutsche Bank, improper accounting controls and bookkeeping. It's going to come back on companies. People are going to find it. They're going to look closer at the books and say, hey, this is not accurate. That's why the FCPA was put together. Did you know years upon years ago we didn't have a Corporate Social Responsibilities Act? Corporate social responsibilities covers every publicly run corporation and makes them adhere to standards. And then there's also inspections of the books. There's also review. There's transparency now. So ethics goes a long way and also can backfire on you if you keep trying to get around, let's just say, things that you know are not legal. Test prep. What is ethics? We talked about it. It is basically something you're doing that is an acceptable norm in society. Be it right, be it wrong, be it good, be it bad. How do ethics differ from legality? Legal, you broke the law. It's a law that actually is written that says you can't do this. Ethics allows you to get close to breaking that law, but you haven't broke it yet. You're doing things to get around some of the legalities. So when faced with ethical dilemmas, what question can you ask yourself that might help you make ethical decisions? 1, 2, 3, 2 slides back. Is it balanced? Do I feel good about it when I get home? And should I do it? Ethics again starts at the top. Managers, I believe in this. It is lead by example. If you have a corrupt manager, you're going to have a corrupt employees. Trust between workers and managers. I served 20 years in the United States Navy. I don't think I've had any sailors or officers, fellow officers, ever not come through in a professional and morally sound way to get the job done. But that's because that was my ethics. That's the way I rolled. Overly ambitious goals and incentives can create an environment in which unethical actions can occur, which means when I worked at Home Depot years ago, we had to have a certain percentage of credit cards let's say, applications processed each day. We had to make sure that we upsold items. We had to make so it was like you were always trying to cheat the customer. And I left that place after 6 months. I said, I can't do this. Again, that's ethically me. I would try to give my military members their 10% discount at the register, and I got slapped on the wrist because they said we can't offer the discount unless they ask for the discount. That's not ethical. They don't know there's a discount. They're in military gear. They're actually in officer's attire. I would get in trouble. Factors influencing managerial ethics, or get into that. I want you to, at this point, review the rest of the PowerPoint. Get into setting corporate ethical standards, very important. Code of conduct, every company should have this. And now what I want to do is just pause for the cause and let you guys review the rest of the PowerPoint. This again is considered always my mini lecture series. And this was chapter 2, talking about making ethical decisions and managing a socially responsible business. I've been Professor Alston. I'll see you in chapter 3.